What's up, folks, and welcome to Indie Ramble. So, this game is going to be kind of hard to talk about for a few different reasons. It's something that I found very interesting and somewhat profound in many ways. But the reason it's hard to talk about is not just because of its subject matter, but because any part of this I show to you could be considered a spoiler. So, what we're going to do with this, just to lay the groundwork a little bit, is I'm going to be jumping around a few of the different chapters in this game, but I'm going to try not to show too much of anything. Just to give you an idea what it's like, but without spoiling anything, because the story is what this game is all about. So, as you can see, this is Torn Away. And it's interesting because it's a story focused around the horrors of World War II. It's actually made by a small Russian developer, and it's told from a rather unique perspective you don't hear a lot in World War II. That is of a young girl whose family, a young Russian girl whose family is captured by the Germans in World War II, and who manages to escape from a forced labor camp and is attempting to get back to her family. And it's trying to convey the horrible story of this character, which can be related to a lot of people who survived the war, if you will, and the trauma that she goes through and the very difficult journey that she has getting back to her family, if you will. And I'll tell you off the bat here, again, without spoiling anything, that this is not a happy game as you might expect. But this is not one of those games where you get to the end and everything's hunky-dory and sunshine and rainbows and, you know, she got home and yay, everything ends really well. No, it's not like that. This is a story that starts unhappy and ends at best bittersweet. Let's put it that way. So, this game is, you'll see it here that it kind of looks like a platformer, maybe kind of like a Limbo or an Inside or something like that, because it's side-scrolling. It does principally take place in that perspective, though it does change to first-person sometimes, and there are some little puzzles and mini-games, if you will, in this. But the best way I could describe this is an interactive story, almost like an interactive storybook. I mean, you can see it has this very interesting, sort of hand-painted look to it, but I suspect the YouTube video algorithm is probably crushing the heck out of it because it has that sort of almost film grain distorted look on everything that's shifting around. That's by design. That's actually the way the game is designed to look. I quite like it. It's a very interesting art style, and it really feels like an interactive storybook. And I'll tell you, there really isn't a lot of gameplay in this, per se. There's no real failure state. The few times in this game that you can die, you just go a few seconds back and spawn back in again. You know, there's very little in the way of failure states in this. There are some choices you can make at certain points, but they really just change some dialogue options. And yeah, there really isn't a lot of failure in this. This is one of the first-person segments. You have a couple of little challenges to do, but really you're just advancing the story and listening to the dialogue between your character and her, I guess you'd say her sanity friend. So, as many young kids do, your character has imaginary friends that usually take the form of stuffed toys growing up. And you'll spend a lot of the game with this guy named Commander Mitten, or Comrade Mitten, I should say. And he's really her rock, and he's a stand-in for the mental struggles that the character is going through. And he's sort of representing her unconscious in some cases, and her struggles in others. He's the motivating factor that she uses to tell herself to keep going and not to give up hope. And there's a dynamic between these two characters that you'll hear as you go. All the dialogue is spoken. You may have heard a little bit of it here. You may have also heard that it's not in English. So you do have an option for English voiceovers. They actually gave the choice, which I appreciate. But they actually even recommend in the menu, the developer recommends that you use the Russian voiceover, and I very much agree. The English voiceover, it's cool that it's there, but it's not great. I don't think the performances are very convincing, and I just didn't find it very engaging. I think it took a lot away from the characters. So using the Russian voiceover with English subtitles, I think is your smart move with this. But you have the option, which is nice. The whole game takes about 3 to 4 hours, depending on how thorough you are. It's very linear. You know, there's no branching paths, there's no side stories, there's no anything like that. There's a bunch of achievements tied to doing certain things and a few of the choices that you make, but none of them really affect the outcome of the story. But so this is really more akin to like a walking simulator in terms of gameplay. And you all know me that I have very high standards for walking sims. Because the whole idea of video games is that they're supposed to be games first. And if you're going to be playing, if you have a compelling story that you want to tell, that's perfectly fine. But as a game, your game should be a game first. And you should use the medium of gameplay in order to tell that story, in my opinion. This does a little bit. There is some interactivity, there is some puzzles to solve, but it is very, very light on the gameplay. So if you're someone who's particularly sensitive to that and is like, you know, I don't want to watch my game, I want to play it, you may not be that interested in this. But the thing about walking simulators is I don't dislike them all on spec. I like several of them, in fact. And the ones that I like are the ones where... Because the problem with a lot of walking sims is they're made by very auteurish, pretentious designers who think that their story is so amazing that it doesn't need compelling gameplay to back it up. And most of the time, that's not the case. But the ones where the story is so good that it does justify the lack of gameplay, I can appreciate that, because... Sometimes, I've said this before, that sometimes you want a game that's just a little lighter on the gameplay, that doesn't demand a lot of you, but that still makes you feel like you accomplished something or experienced something profound. And that is what this one does. This is going to be largely a one-and-done game. This isn't something you're going to play multiple times. Your choices don't really have any meaningful impact in terms of the story, you know, nothing like that. But the story that this tells is very moving, very profound, and very heartbreaking in a lot of cases. And it is designed to use an interactive method to show the horrors of war and to show some of the terrible things that some people went through in World War II. Like, you're going to notice in all these different scenes that I'm going through here that the character always has a very stoic, defeated look on her face. She never looks happy. She always looks either sad or defeated, or just has that hardened look of someone who's been through hell, but who continues to push on because there's nothing else she can do. You know, it's either that or give up, and she doesn't want to give up. And you will experience challenge after challenge after challenge in this game, like this incredible number of unfair things that happen to her, and you'll experience her drive and determination to go on to reach her ultimate conclusion. And I do like the way that the game shifts perspective. Sometimes it's first person, sometimes it's third person, sometimes you're doing some puzzle type things, sometimes the scene is mostly just walking or running like this. Sometimes it's just dialogue between some people, you know? And that's okay sometimes. Again, if the story that you're telling is actually meaningful and well done. And in this game, I think they definitely achieve that. It's not going to be for everyone. Again, there's really not much game here. And if you're someone who really... And I say this as someone for whom game mechanics are my main driving thing. I'll take good mechanics over a good story any day of the week. So if you're someone for whom mechanics are vitally important, then you're probably not going to like this. And that's okay. This developer actually says on their website that they are not making games for everyone. They're making specific kinds of games for specific kinds of people that are telling what they want to tell. And I admire that, actually, a lot. I really admire that. And I think they made something very interesting here. You know, I kind of feel bad for them because they're a Russian developer making a game about the horrors of war, and it's a bad time for Russia and a lot of the Russian people in that sense right now. And I can only imagine that it must have been very hard for them to put this out with what's happening in the world. And I do admire them doing that, and I think they made something very interesting here. And like I said, I'm jumping around in the chapters here because I don't want to give too much away. I'm trying to show you a little bit about how the game differs and how perspectives change and whatnot. But the story is what this is all about, and you don't want it spoiled if you have any interest in it. You know, if you are interested in a well-told story that deals with hard subject matter and will make you think, then, and maybe will give you some fairly strong emotion, then I do really strongly recommend you grab this and give it a go. You should play it for yourself. Don't go watch a Let's Play. Don't go watch a long play or something like that. Games like this are the type of thing that I believe people really need to experience for themselves. I don't think you'll get the same impact out of it by just watching it. I don't think that serves... I don't think you're getting the proper experience based on that. But I found this quite interesting. If these devs do make another game, I do hope they're able to work a bit more interactivity into it, make it a little bit more game-like. But I think they did very well here. I think the perspective of, you know, a young girl and her imaginary friends as the principal characters is very interesting. And, you know, there are other games that do really impressive things with the horrors of war and that subject matter. You know, I think one of the most profound games on the subject I've still ever played is this War of Mine. And that is a game that is very much a game. You know, it's a management sim, really. But it's a management sim that makes you make some absolutely horrific choices and makes you live with those. And that's something I find really... That's something I personally found, you know, I found that really moving, to the point where I played the game like twice, and, you know, I've done 2 longer sessions with it, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Like, I haven't played it since. I'd like to, but it's so hard. And it's supposed to be, right? This is not going to put you through that level of an experience. This is something where you'll be done in a few hours, and you will get a moving experience, but it's really telling you the story rather than you creating it yourself. I think that's an important distinction. But it's very hard to make a game about this subject matter that doesn't feel tacky and that doesn't feel like it's sort of... I guess you'd say cashing in on a tragedy. You know, you look at some of the Call of Duty games, like Call of Duty Vanguard, which technically took place in World War II, but you're playing a World War II game where you can buy Snoop Dogg skins, you know? It doesn't feel at all respectful to the source subject matter, and it feels like it's just callously cashing in on it, right? This is not doing that. These are not people who made this to try to profit off of pulling on your heartstrings. This was clearly made by developers who had a story they wanted to tell and wanted to make something profound. Whether or not you think it is going to be, you know, a little bit subjective, of course, depending on how you like your stories told and how important, you know, true gameplay mechanics are to you in something like this. But that's why I wanted to show this to you, because like I said, I'm trying to do it in just this sort of this very light touch kind of way, because if you're interested in this, you should go play it. And I think you should. I think you should very much give it a chance. I think it's important that games like this get made and do find an audience where where they're able to tell these hard stories and do it in a way that makes it compelling to people. I think that's very important. And for a small team and their first game, I think they did some good stuff here. And I hope this does well enough that they can do other things and maybe be able to expand a little bit more on the gameplay at that point. Because I think they clearly have the chops to do something very interesting here, and I'd like to see more of it. But I think I'm going to cut it here just because, like I said, I don't want to spoil too much, and if what I've said here interests you, you should go grab this. If it doesn't, that's okay too. If you're just totally averse to walking sims and interactive stories like that, I get it, you know, personal preference. But I do recommend you give, if you're at all into it, I do recommend you give this a look, because it's a different kind of war story told from a different perspective that makes things, that makes it different from a lot of others in a way that I found quite compelling. So yeah, that is Torn Away. It is out now. Yeah, go give it a look. I think it's interesting. I think it's compelling, and I think it's something that deserves a chance to get its time in the spotlight. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. I do appreciate it. If you like what you saw here, please do all the normal YouTube things. Those really do help the channel out a great deal. Leave a comment down below. Tell me, you know, does the concept of this game interest you? What are some other games of this nature that interest you? This is becoming a bit more of a thing, this kind of story-heavy thing. And I'm sure there's some other stuff out there that I haven't played yet, and I am interested in seeing ways people take the medium of video games and tell stories with it that way. And as always, you can follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction for multiple variety streams a week. I cover other indie games as well as retro stuff there, including a lot of games that are better suited to streaming than YouTube. We have a fantastic community there, and I'd love to see you be a part of it. Thanks again, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take it easy.